Doing bald. That looks pretty good. Oh, last thing I wanted to throw in there. Hey, a big shout out to everybody who subbed. Like, I mean, we did a little video before Christmas, and I mean, we shot up by a ton of subs. I think it's like 20 or something, 20, 30 subs somewhere in there. So hello friends, this is Worm, back after an extended holiday vacation, and man, I had a great Christmas. I hope all of y'all did as well. I do apologize for the lack of an upload yesterday. My little boy, he wasn't feeling very good. So with that being said, we're back with another What If Wednesday, the series where we talk about some fun what ifs that could happen or would happen, or that maybe we'd like to see or not like to see happen in Destiny 2. Of course, if you missed last week's episode, we talked about the competitive playlist, but today I wanted to shift focus and talk about Pinnacle weapons, because in last week's episode, lots of people brought up Mountaintop and Recluse. Ooh, I got my hair stood up when I said that. Mountaintop and Recluse. Ooh. Lots of people were talking about Pinnacle weapons and how pivotal they were to bring crowds into the competitive playlist, right? Like, comp was not, I would say, not really a fun place to be back in the day. Like, yeah, people did it and stuff like that. You know, we had Luna's Howl and Not Forgotten, and yeah, like the PvP players went in and got those, and it was great. Like they loved getting them and they loved using them and stuff like that. But it wasn't until Mountaintop and Recluse came around that I mean, it changed the whole perspective on the competitive playlist, right? So I figured we'd talk about some what ifs on Pinnacle weapons and whether or not, or what it would be like if Bungie brought them back. Of course, we need to go over what a Pinnacle weapon is, because I think there's some of you who probably weren't around when Pinnacles were a thing, or when they were in their prime, I should say. But for lack of a better description here, Pinnacle weapons were essentially curated roles on legendary weapons that featured incredibly unique perks or frames or stuff like that. And of course, like we just mentioned, the two most notorious weapons that were, you know, Pinnacle weapons were Mountaintop and Recluse. And we're not going to dive super deep into why they were the way that they were and stuff like that. But Pinnacle weapons, like I said, their unique features about them were that they had perks that no other no other weapon had, right? Like 21% Delirium at the time was the only weapon that could have killing tally on it. And of course, Bungie has brought in some of these old Pinnacle perks and changed them into, I guess, more on par legendary perks. You know, they've nerfed the damage on killing tally, you know, and they've nerfed and brought down a lot of these perks, but at one point they were absolutely on top. So that's what they are, slash what they were. And I say that's what they were because they're no longer relevant. You can still get them in the game. You can actually go to the exotic kiosk in the tower and pick up Mountaintop and Recluse, but they are nowhere near as strong as they once were. And that's kind of what defined a Pinnacle weapon, right? Like that power fantasy that they had, because they were, in essence, they were legendary exotics, right? They featured perks that no other weapon could get, which is similar to how exotics are, but exotics were probably a little bit more niche, while, you know, these Pinnacle perks, such as Master of Arms that came on Recluse, was very, very generic, right? It was crazy. And Bungie sunset a lot of weapons in the game, in my opinion, because of these Pinnacle weapons, right? Like, you know, Bungie, the way they said it, they said, well, we need to sunset. And of course we have, you know, we've talked about sunsetting before, but sunsetting was basically they removed a bunch of content from the game and made it irrelevant. But sunsetting was because they needed more space in the game, and that there are too many weapons taking up space, blah, 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 all this stuff. I don't think that's the reason. I think the reason why is because they built these Pinnacle weapons and they had no idea how to change them until later on, right? Later on down the road, they figure out, okay, well, we'll nerf Master of Arms in this way, and, you know, we'll nerf Mountaintop and stuff like that. But at the time that they were added to the game and they were running at their highest marks, Bungie said, we got to take them out because we don't know what to do with them. So that is what Pinnacles are. That's kind of the history of Pinnacles. Now I want to talk about the idea of having Pinnacles back in the game currently, right? Because again, that was something that a lot of you were saying in last week's What If Wednesday, is they should just bring back Pinnacle weapons. Now, here's the reality of it. I don't know if it's a good idea to bring back Pinnacle weapons into the game. Okay, and I know, like, that's, a lot of people said, yes, it would be awesome. And you're right, I would love to see some Pinnacle weapons added back into Destiny 2, right, in the state that they were in, you know, back several years ago. But I think the reality of it is these weapons suffocated the meta. Like Mountaintop, Recluse, and insert whatever great exotic heavy you wanted was the way to go. Right? I mean, I even saw people that would use, 21% Delirium, Mountaintop, and Recluse, like not even use an exotic because these weapons were so good, right? Recluse made basically every other energy exotic weapon irrelevant because of how strong it was, how good it was. So I don't think that Bungie bringing back Pinnacles would ever be a really good idea, especially bringing them back in the form that they used to be in. Right, so that's kind of my thoughts on that. But what if instead of bringing back Pinnacles as Pinnacles, as these curated roles that are super unique and stuff like that, what if instead Bungie brought in a new set of Pinnacle weapons that instead of having these crazy unique perks, right, or unique frames that made them absolutely insane, what if they just gave us the absolute god rolls on Pinnacle weapons? Of course, Pinnacle weapons were eventually replaced by ritual weapons, and ritual weapons were replaced by a singular ritual weapon, which we've said before, we don't like that. They really need to bring back the 3 different rituals. But I think that what Bungie could potentially do, keep your ritual weapon, keep your, chivalric fire, keep your, what was last season's? I don't even remember. I can't even remember some of the ritual weapons. That's how, malediction. Keep your malediction in the game, but have a unique Vanguard, Gambit, and Crucible weapon, right? That in each of their respective like domains, they are incredibly good, right? Because one of the issues with having Pinnacles back in the day was Mountaintop and Recluse. Yeah, they were great in PvP, but they were also like top notch in PvE. Like Mountaintop and infinite like auto reloading was insanely good. You had spike grenades on it as well for that cherry on top. Recluse, any kill would just feed you a constant, damage boost on enemies. And I think in PvE it was like 30 or 35%, which is like crazy. That's a crazy amount of damage. And so I think that, that was one of the things that brought people from PvE to PvP back in the day. Sorry, I don't think we talked about this, but that was one of the things that brought players from PvE to PvP and the comp playlist back in the day, was the fact that these comp weapons were so good inside of PvE. I don't think that that's necessarily a good idea on Bungie's end. I do think that having, say a PvP weapon with, a perk combo that is absolutely goated, right? One of the examples that comes to mind for me personally is Fellwinter's Lie. Fellwinter's Lie, although it wasn't necessarily a Pinnacle / ritual weapon, it was part of a quest line and stuff. Fellwinter's Lie is a wonderful example, of what a Pinnacle could look like nowadays, right? Fellwinter's Lie has slide shot, opening shot. It has surplus and Vorpal, right? Those are your combos. You can get slide shot and opening shot or Vorpal, or you can get surplus, opening shot, and Vorpal. This made Fellwinter's Lie an absolute menace to deal with up until Bungie made the changes to shotguns, right? Like when they made the change to shotguns, then Fellwinter's kind of fell off a little bit, as well as some range changes. But overall, Fellwinter's still a fantastic and a super strong shotgun. What if Bungie did that for our Pinnacle weapons? For example, they bring in a new PvP, let's say a PvP submachine gun, right? PvP submachine gun, give it like dynamic sway reduction in the 3rd column, and then give it maybe, I don't know what's another good perk on SMGs. The only SMG perks I use are dynamic sway and tap the trigger. But give it 2 phenomenal SMG PvP perks in that 3rd column, and in the 4th column give it 2 more, right? So you can get dynamic sway and tap the trigger, or dynamic sway and target lock, and then the 1st column, insert whatever, enlightened action. Not that that's a great perk, but that's just an example. And then for the strike playlist, sorry, I lost my train of thought there. For the strike playlist, we get, say, a pulse rifle, and on this pulse rifle we get, in the 3rd column we get rapid hits and demolitionist, right? And then in the 4th column we can get, a subclass perk, or a subclass synergizing perk like incandescent or volt shot or something like that, and then kill clip. Just something to like make it an absolute god roll, like something that like, oh my gosh, like players that do X number of things in these playlists gets this weapon, and everybody gets the same weapon, but it's very, very good. Now, of course, what could that be? I think that Bungie could, of course, associate some triumphs with it, like instead of just, hey, do a lot of Vanguard strikes to get your level up and then you get this new ritual weapon. No, instead have this Pinnacle weapon, this Pinnacle god roll weapon, say, you have to maybe guild your Conqueror title, or complete, or just maybe complete one Grandmaster Nightfall, you know, do X number of strikes, or instead of maybe X number of strikes, like get X amount of score in X number of strikes, right? Or just something like that, something more than just playing the strikes and stuff to get these, right? Like, I think that with Pinnacle weapons, if they were to bring back Pinnacle weapons in the state that I just described, where they're like, you know, the perfect god rolls, so to speak, they would need to have more effort put into getting them than just do this thing, right? When we get to the Crucible, that's where it's a little bit difficult, because I think the comp plays, like, obviously comp already has its comp unique weapons, right? This season we have Belisarius, which is a wonderful pulse rifle. It is so good. I actually got a couple of rolls that I'm really interested in, but it's got some great rolls on it. I don't know if comp is necessarily the best thing, because like comp in its current state is not really enjoyable in my opinion. I literally do 9 games a week, 3 on each character, so I can get my Belisarius, and then I call it a day. But maybe instead of in comp, like, you know, it's you win X amount of Crucible games. You know, you have to win, you know, 50 Crucible games. You have to, you know, have a obtain a score or a KD of like 1.5 or higher in 10 games. Just something like that, something more, so that players have to invest more time and consciously make more of an effort to go out and get these pinnacles. But of course, the reward is much better than the current, you know, ritual weapons that we have. Like, I don't know about y'all, I haven't used Chivalric Fire ever, like literally at all. I never used Malediction either. Like, they just didn't interest me. But if Bungie brings in these Pinnacle weapons with these curated absolute god rolls, it's almost like a stepping stone between ritual. All right, ritual's right here. This is where Malediction and Chivalric Fire are, and then this is where let's say this is where old Pinnacles used to be, and then exotics are like right up here. Have these new, you know, these new Pinnacles, so to speak, be kind of right here, right here in this little area. Right, they're better than the ritual, but they're not quite as good as the old Pinnacle weapons were, and they're not quite as good as exotics are. They're just really strong rolls for what they do. Right, I think that would be the perfect way that Bungie could bring back Pinnacle weapons to the game. And you know, we talked a second ago, we said, you know, keeping these Pinnacle weapons specific to their content, right? Like keeping PvP stuff really better, like, you know, better off in PvP. The SMG with, you know, dynamic sway and target lock, like that's not something I would ever take into PvE, right? That's something I'm a little bit more questionable on, because here's the reality. One of the things that got people into the comp playlist was the fact that the PvP weapons, the PvP Pinnacle weapons, were so good inside of PvE, you could not pass up on it, right? Like you could not just like ignore Recluse and Mountaintop. Like if you had the potential to get it, you had to go out there and get it because it was that good. I don't necessarily know if that's the best idea to bring that back, because you don't want to force players into a playlist that they don't like to get a weapon that's borderline required. I don't want to say it's required, but it's borderline required inside of, you know, PvE. It's the same thing with Gambit. You know, they added Breakneck to Gambit. By the way, Breakneck used to be a Pinnacle weapon. It used to be a Pinnacle weapon, and Onslaught, one of the newer perks, also used to be a Pinnacle perk that was tied to Rampage. But with that being said, you know, Breakneck, for example, they're bringing Breakneck back. Breakneck was always a pretty good auto rifle, you know, back in, you know, whenever it was a Pinnacle weapon. With Sunset, now it's brought back. Like, I don't want to go out and play Gambit. I don't like Gambit. I don't want to feel like I'm forced to play Gambit to get a Breakneck god roll. And Breakneck is not a weapon that I'm saying you need to go out and break your neck, no pun intended, to get. Because, I mean, if it's got some cool rolls, if you like some of the rolls, yeah, go get it. But it's not like a requirement, because nobody wants to play Gambit. I'm sorry if you're a Gambit. No, I lied. I know there's, I think, like 4 of you out there that watch all my videos that just love Gambit. I mean, salute, you know, whatever. I don't like Gambit. I don't like playing Gambit, so I tend to stay out of it. So I don't know if it's a good idea to, you know, entice players to a playlist they don't want to play because of a weapon, because that was one of the point of contention with Mountaintop and Recluse, is it forced PvE players to go play PvP. And back then it was much more difficult because cheaters were still a thing. Like they hadn't had anti-cheat. Like it was miserable getting Mountaintop and Recluse. Like I remember when I was working on getting Mountaintop and Recluse, it was miserable. I don't want players to be miserable playing Destiny 2 to get a reward. And the flip side of it is, of course, you know, once I got Mountaintop and Recluse, I felt so good. And there is that euphoric sense that like, oh, yes, I finally got whatever. It's like, you know, getting your first flawless run, your first solo flawless Trials of Osiris card, right? It feels good. Like every time you get it, every single season, at the start of the season, as soon as Trials is around, I go flawless one time so I can get the new shader, and that's it. And every time I go flawless, I do it solo, and I think to myself, I'm like, oh, that felt good. You know, the shader this season, Vizier Regalia, that felt good to get. Like there is that sense of like euphoria when you do get these weapons, but I don't know if it really outweighs the grind that it takes to get them, especially for the majority of players. Like hardcore players, yeah, I don't think hardcore players would have an issue at all. Like myself, like if there was a god tier Gambit weapon, like yeah, I'd get in Gambit and I'd grind out until I got it, right? Doesn't mean I want to, doesn't mean I'm gonna enjoy that weapon as much as I hated playing Gambit, but you know, that's just kind of my thoughts. I mean, we're kind of rambling at this point, but that's my thought on what if Bungie brought back Pinnacle, right? I don't think they need to come back in the state that they were in, because they made other weapons just completely irrelevant. You know what, actually one more thought that I have here. What if Bungie did bring back Pinnacles with these unique perks and unique roles, but they were watered down versions of what old Pinnacles used to be? You know, Master of Arms used to be absolutely insane, right? Like Master of Arms used to be crazy. What if they brought in another perk that did a very unique thing that only rolled on this one weapon, but it was a little bit more, maybe, I don't want to say niche, because I think niche tiptoes on the exotic, like on exotic weapons, right? Like, because niche rolls are something like you know, Sunshot and Scorching, or better yet, Skyburner's Oath and Scorch, right? Like, what if Bungie brought in, you know, some unique perks that only rolled on certain weapons, on the Pinnacle weapons, not certain weapons, but on the Pinnacle weapon for whatever it is, but they were not nearly as good. Maybe like, you know, something like Master of Arms. Master of Arms makes a comeback, but instead of being that 20% crit damage increase and like 85% body shot damage increase, what if it's just like a flat like 7%, right? Like something really small, minor, like yes, like that's helpful. You know, on maybe a 900 SMG, it takes your TTK down by 1 bullet, which I know 1 bullet can be a lot. I don't know, like that's just, I'm kind of playing with some what ifs now, but I think that a better idea that Bungie could do would be to bring back, you know, to bring back Pinnacles, would be to add in weapons with just curated absolute god rolls and goated stats, right? Like stats that are absolutely, you know, you can't beat. You know, we've seen some weapons, you know, Michael's Reverence, the 450 sidearm from Root of Nightmares, that has stats that cannot be topped by any other sidearm in the game. Like that's the kind of stats I'd want to see on these Pinnacle weapons. And instead of having Pinnacle perks, just have these curated absolute god rolls. Then, you know, if everybody's running around with a new shotgun with, I don't know, quick draw opening shot, for example, you have the potential to go get it too. Now you can run around with that too. Because that was one of the things that made Pinnacles, like, really good in my opinion, was they're curated. If you went up against somebody with a Recluse and you also had Recluse, y'all were on a level playing field. You know, it's not like, you know, god rolls, you know, where, oh, like somebody has a dynamic sway target lock SMG and I just have a dynamic sway tap the trigger SMG of the same type. Like, you know, everybody that gets this god tier statted out weapon has the same role. That way everybody can have the same play, you know, or same potential, I should say. And of course you don't have to use Pinnacles if you don't want to. But with that being said, we are really rambling at this point. Guys, I really hope y'all had a great holidays. Of course, we'll be back tomorrow to talk about something else. I don't know yet. I haven't really planned that out. So if you got any ideas, tell me in the comments. But with that being said, I want to hear your thoughts on Pinnacle weapons and your thoughts on my ideas for how Bungie could bring back Pinnacle weapons. Do you like the idea of, you know, Pinnacle weapons coming back that are more of curated god rolls, and not just god rolls, I mean like god rolls, right? Like stat monsters and the perfect perk combos. You know, Fellwinter's Lie being that example, right? Fellwinter's Lie being that example. How would you feel about that, or would you want to see them come back in their original form, those absolutely goated, crazy strong weapons? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Of course, if you enjoyed today's video, drop a like, really helps the channel out a lot. I hope y'all had a great holidays. That's it for me. Do me a favor, watch the videos you see on the end screen, because for whatever reason, YouTube thinks you'll like them. Guys, I will see y'all next time. Bye for now.